Okay, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. It is a real pleasure, and thank you to Jody and Candace who made this event happen. I thought today that I would tell sort of three stories from my career that were sort of pivotal moments. Before I get into that, just to introduce myself, I am a partner at Real Ventures, which is an early stage venture capital firm. We invest primarily in early stage Canadian technology companies, and we are the largest, most active early stage investor in Canada. As I said, three sort of pivotal moments in my career that taught me a lot. The first one that I'd like to share with you is back in about 1999, I was working at McKinsey in Toronto, and I decided that I wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. I had run my own businesses in high school and in university. So I wanted to join a more entrepreneurial company, and I also wanted to move to the US. I had spent most of my life living in Toronto and Southern Ontario, and I just wanted to have an adventure. I wanted to have new experiences. I wanted to meet new people. And so I decided that I wanted to move to Silicon Valley and join a great startup. Now, I knew nobody in Silicon Valley, and I had no work permit or anything like that, but I didn't let that stop me. I thought, okay, how am I going to get into a company there? And I thought, well, I'll just take sort of the most efficient sort of one-to-many approach, and I will contact venture capitalists who may have a portfolio of companies and would understand, hey, which company would be most appropriate for me. And so I did some research, and I found sort of a list of the top 10 venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. And then for each one of those firms, I did research on the background of each of the partners. And one of those firms was Benchmark, and there was a partner there named Bob Cagle. And he had worked in packaged goods and in consulting. And I had also started my career in packaged goods. I'd been in marketing at Procter & Gamble, and then I'd worked at McKinsey & Company. So I thought, perfect. Hopefully this guy will relate to me. So I cold called him, left him a message, no response. I emailed him, no response. I called him again. After about 10 of these voicemail messages and email messages, his assistant finally called me back and said, Janet, Bob has got all your messages. He has nothing in his portfolio that would be suitable for you. And then I talked to her a little bit more, and then she said, but you know what, if you're ever in Silicon Valley, feel free to give me a call, and and Bob would be happy to meet with you. So I said, okay, great. So then a couple of days later, I called her up. I said, hey, I just happen to be in Silicon Valley in a couple of weeks. Do you think I could come and meet with Bob? And so sure enough, I then actually, before I went to meet him, I did some due diligence and found out that Bob was actually a legend in Silicon Valley. Among other things, he had put the initial money into eBay. And I thought, well, it's a good thing I didn't know that, because otherwise I probably wouldn't be phoning him up and saying, hey, Bob, it's Janet Bannister, following up on my email. So, I mean, again, a lesson about sometimes what you don't know actually helps you quite a bit. Anyways, I went and met with him. We had a great meeting. And by the end of it, he said, you know what, Janet, you got to meet with Meg Whitman, who was heading eBay at the time. He said, I happen to have a board meeting tomorrow. I'm going to tell Meg that she's got to meet with you. And so sure enough, the next day at the end of the day, my cell phone rings, and the voice at the other end says, hey, Janet, this is Meg Whitman. I just got out of a board meeting, and Bob tells me that I've got to meet with you. Understand you're only in town for a couple days. Can you come over and meet with me? And so that led to me joining eBay, moving to Silicon Valley, joining eBay, and I was fortunate enough to be in a role where basically I was given responsibilities for what we called at that time the practicals categories, which were basically the non-collectibles categories, because 80 or 90% of the things bought and sold on eBay at that time were collectibles, so coin stamps. And so I had a fantastic role at eBay that really changed my whole trajectory of my career and taught me an awful lot. And so, as I said, the lesson I think from that is that you don't need to have connections. You just have to have a belief in yourself and the courage to reach out to people and to make that telephone call and show persistence, and you can get there. That was sort of, as I said, one thing. I think another sort of incident or sort of turning point, I suppose, that I wanted to talk about in terms of my career is, fast forward, I worked at eBay, I came back, launched Kijiji, which is an online classified site, was heading the global Kijiji business. I had a young son at the time who was about 3 years old. And I was traveling around the world, over to Europe, Asia, et cetera, and my son, I felt like he was growing up before my eyes, and I was missing out. And so after some deep soul searching and talking to my husband, I decided to leave. And I left Kijiji, and I actually stayed at home for almost a full year. And when I made that decision to leave work, and it was my husband actually, we were talking, and I was talking about the stress and how I felt that I was missing out. And he said to me, well, why don't you just quit? And I looked at him, I'm like, what do you mean I can't quit? Like, my life is my work. Like, what do you mean? I can't leave. He's like, sure you can. Sure you can do that. And so I did, and as I said, it was it was a very difficult decision for me, and I remember having the conversation with my manager, and the next morning I was up running, I run early in the morning, and I was thinking, Janet, you're such an idiot. Like, why did you do that? You had, why would you ever do that? You had everything going for you. You had a great job, a great career. You were managing this global business from where you wanted to live, which was Toronto, and you've just thrown it all away. And I seriously thought about phoning him up and saying, you know what, I reconsidered, but I didn't quite have the nerve to do that. So anyways, it was very difficult, and in hindsight, it was one of the best career decisions I've ever made. I ended up taking a year off, spending that time with my son, and then I went back to the workforce. I ended up starting my own consulting business immediately after that. But I think the lesson that I learned from that is it's really important in your career to listen to your heart. And when I told most people what I was doing, they thought I was crazy too. They thought, like, why would you ever leave a great job just to, like, stay at home? Like, you've worked so hard for this, why throw it all away? But in my heart, I just felt that it was the right thing for me to do at that time. And I feel so thankful that I had that time, because now he's 12 years old, and he'll never be 3 again. He'll never be 4 again. And so, as I said, I think the next big lesson that I would want to impart to you is follow your heart, listen to your heart, and don't just chase things because you think that that's expected of you or that's what other people want you to do. And then the third sort of turning point is when I was, just before I joined Real Ventures, which was what I do now. And one of the Montreal-based partners had contacted me. They were looking to hire somebody in Toronto. And I had a telephone call, and then I met with the 3 senior partners from the Montreal office. And I remember going home and talking to my husband, and I wasn't sure that I could do it. I thought, I don't know if I could do this job. Like, I don't know if I could be a venture capitalist. And I also thought, it seems to me that all those venture capitalists, they're all men, they're really cutthroat, they're not very nice. I'm really not sure. Anyways, it took me a while to sort of to think about whether I wanted to do it, and I talked to a lot of my friends and got perspectives, but I ended up joining Real Ventures. I've never been happier in my career. And I think the thing that it taught me is that, regardless, I think for a lot of people, regardless of how far you go along, I think for a lot of people, particularly women, there's always that element of self-doubt. And there's always an element, or often an element of, well, can I really do this? Am I going to be good enough? Like, maybe they're just making a mistake by wanting to hire me, And so if you ever feel that way, my advice to you would be to know that that's perfectly normal, and to sort of recognize, okay, I know there's that little voice on my shoulder, and I acknowledge it, and I know that it's there, but I'm not going to let it stop me. And I'm going to go forward anyways, and I'm going to try my best, and I've overcome other obstacles in the past. And so, as I said, I love what I'm doing right now. I've never been as happy to get up every day and go to work, and I think it's because I get to work with entrepreneurs who are pursuing their dreams. And I think what could ever be better than getting to work with entrepreneurs who are pursuing their dreams and providing financing, but more importantly, providing support and guidance, if I can, to help them. I just think, hey, I just feel so fortunate. So again, something that I almost turned down because I didn't have the confidence, or I didn't think I was going to be able to do it, or I didn't know if I was going to, like all these men who seem so, aggressive, and could I actually get in there and do it? And as I said, it's all turned out. So another important lesson from that as well. Well, listen, thanks again for having me. Great to be here.
Thank you.